didn't have any frozen peas, so I'm having to settle for sweet corn. I was gonna wait until the sun went in because this is quite harsh lighting already, and then this black eye comes out to play and I look like a zombie. But I'm bored, so I'm filming a video. Just over 24 hours ago now, me and Noxie took a bit of a tumble. This video is basically going to be me explaining as best I can what happened and what the damage is, basically. Fortunately, obviously, you can see I'm talking. I'm fairly alright. I mean, I've got quite a few bruises on me, as you can see by my black eye, and there's a bruise on here, and there's a bruise on my shoulder, and there's one on my knee, and then I've got this. But otherwise, I'm okay. Frozen sweet corn are now my best friend, as is paracetamol. And considering what happened, Noxie, both of us came off very, very lightly. I'll have to say that. So, what happened? Well, I'm fed up of this, so that's going to go. I don't need an ice pack. I need coffee. Yesterday, I went out on a group ride. Nothing out of the ordinary. And the incident that led to me falling off the bike was not actually very, well, it's something I've done thousands of times before. Hundreds. So, we're out on a group ride. It's quite a nice 60-mile-an-hour road, and it's one of those ones where it's in 3 lanes, but the middle lane is hashed, and then it switches between who can overtake at what point. Essentially, it's a very, very simple story. I go to overtake a car. I end up on hashed white lines. Those hashed white lines caused a speed wobble, and that speed wobble got very, very violent very, very quickly. I was able to lean the bike back into the left-hand lane. This was, I say able to, none of this was any sort of thought process. This all happened way too quickly for me to decide what to do. This is just what happened. The bike ended up getting a speed wobble immediately as I entered the hashed white lines. I ended up back onto my lane. The car behind me, the one that I was overtaking, he actually got in touch with me because he follows me. He's a biker himself. And he said it looked like at one point I'd saved it, but the speed wobble got too violent and basically both me and Noxie went on our left. I ended up half sliding, half tumbling. My left side definitely took more of a hit than the right, that's for certain. And Noxie slid on her left before coming to a stop. I don't exactly know how far she slid, but judging by how much of the slider has shaved away, it was quite a lot. So it's one of those situations where I wasn't being reckless. I wasn't even speeding. I made a lapse of judgment, really, but I've also done this hundreds of times before and obviously never had this outcome. It just so happened that that portion of road was particularly bad for bumps, even though it looked very nicely paved. Maybe the paint was too bumpy, or the heat of the day had warped it. Whatever reason, for whatever reason, I got a speed wobble, and one that was too violent to come back under control. That's literally it. That's all that happened. I remember every part of this, which is, I guess, is a good thing on one hand, because it means I don't have too many brain cells missing. It's also not so great because I remember everything, and I remember how hard I hit the floor, which was very, very hard. And I remember tumbling. At that point, I had my eyes closed just out of reflex. I remember being forcefully thrown from the bike, slamming my head and my left side into the floor, possibly tumbling. I know tumbling at some point because I've got bruising on my right side as well, and then coming to a stop and looking up at the sky, thinking that's a bit lighter than normal because my visor had been knocked off, but But also the only thought was, and this happened whilst the speed wobble was happening as well, the only thought was, oh my God, this is actually happening. Like, is this actually happening? And then wham, and then lying on the floor. That actually just happened. I've actually just been in a crash. There was no time for fear when I was on the bike wobbling around. There was no time for any emotion. It was literally just, oh my God, this is happening. Wham. And then as I was looking up at the sky, immediately I start moving every limb I can, because I'm obviously like, right, what can I move? Thankfully, everything. Obviously the adrenaline at that point, I felt no pain. I was just like, right, if I can move things, then that surely means they're at least somewhat okay. I remember hearing someone go, don't move, don't move, don't move. So I remember just putting my thumbs up, because I was still lying down like, I'm okay, I'm conscious. And the guy in the car behind me, he was the first one I saw, obviously checking on me, making sure I was all right. Loads of other people stopped, and obviously because I was on a group ride, everyone who I was riding with came back or caught up with me, and, you know, ended up collecting everything, all of the bits that had flown out of my pockets, the cardo that had smashed off my helmet, the helmet visor, my phone, and then obviously picking up the bike, because obviously the first question I asked after I could wiggle every limb was, is my bike okay? And I then got sort of picked up to sit on the side of the curb after they sort of realised I could move everything. I think someone at some point was already calling the ambulance, and when I was sat on the curb I could see Noxie stood up on the side of the road, and from what I could see she was okay. So I was like, alright, the bike stood up and I've been told there's no oil and I feel alright. Obviously after a few minutes the adrenaline started to crash a little bit and I felt a bit faint, and that's when they moved me to the shade more and lay me down in the recovery position, which helped a massive deal. Fortunately I stayed conscious throughout all of this, so I was able to talk to the ambulance team myself. Once I got in the ambulance, they did all the checks and they were relatively happy with what was going on. They were happy to just send me to minor injuries, and then a couple of hours later I get this x-rayed and I have a minor fracture in my wrist. So this will take 4 to 6 weeks to heal, apparently. I've not really been given a time as to when I can get back on the bike, to be honest. I'm definitely not in shape to get on a bike right now. Obviously I've got a black eye, so there's a bit of swelling here, and just general muscle stiffness. Overall I feel alright. Obviously I know these next couple of days are going to be a bit tough. I'm going to do as much low impact exercise as I can to try and relieve any tension that's building up, because my neck's a bit stiff and my arms are a bit stiff. Obviously I'm bruising, but I can walk, I can talk, I can think, I can use my dominant hand, I can mostly use my left hand. I came off that bike at about 60 miles an hour. The impact was solid, I'll tell you that. I am very fortunate to be as in good shape as I am. I know that could have gone a lot worse. If I had not been able to control the speed wobble to some degree and get it back in my own lane, I could have ended up on the wrong side of traffic. I'm also obviously very fortunate because the people I were with and the people that stopped were amazing. I got so much help. And Noxie didn't fare too badly either. I'm reliving that crash a lot in my head, and I know when I get back on the bike it's going to be something that sits in the back of my mind. That yesterday morning, I had a really bad gut feeling. But as someone with anxiety, you tend to think that your gut feelings aren't always right. In that instance, I wish I would have listened. but also if I had to have had an accident, I picked a pretty good time to do it. Surrounded by other bikers, surrounded by help, not coming off too worse for wear, and having the support from 2 very lovely sponsors, which I'll get onto now. So obviously R&G, they saved my bike. There's no other way of putting it. That crash bung has taken an awful lot of damage. Noxie has a broken mirror, broken front indicator, obviously the crash bung is scuffed, the bar end is scuffed, my lever is scuffed, the tail is scuffed, rear wheel axle bolt or nut is quite well shaved down. That's going to be a bit of a nightmare to get out, and the side stand and the side stand switch are damaged, so we'll need replacing. But actually, thanks to the crash bung on the left hand side of Noxie, the only thing she needs to run right now is a side stand switch and a new stand. Obviously I'm not going to ride for a few weeks, so I'll be able to replace the mirrors and the indicators and repair some of the other damages as well that are cosmetic, but overall she still runs. The fairings, yes, they're a bit scratched up, but they're not cracked. The one thing that does need looking at is the front wheel head bearings, because they're making a bit of a funny noise, and I'm not surprised. They're probably a bit damaged, but overall my repair bill could be an awful lot worse. I'm also very grateful no one else was involved. This crash happened because of a decision I made. I would hate for someone else to have been impacted by me deciding to overtake, even if it was in a legal and relatively sensible way. Sure, I could have stayed behind the car, but I've done a manoeuvre like that hundreds of times before and it's been fine. But obviously you get into that mindset of it's never happened before, so it won't happen this time, and not every time is going to be the same, and it turns out this time wasn't. I would like to say thank you to everyone who was on scene and helped out in some way. If I name names, I'm going to forget someone because my brain's a bit all over the place, obviously, thinking about this. I can't fault the NHS. They were brilliant. I had an ambulance on scene relatively quickly. I was well cared for. I spent a couple of hours in minor injuries and I got a nice little splint out of it. I got sent on my way. Yeah, I had loads of friends and family around me that day. I say that day, yesterday. It's been a very weird 24 hours, I'll tell you that. So I'm just grateful for the support. And obviously I mentioned the 2 sponsors that are massively helping me out with this, because that's a bit bashed up now, that crash bung. And R&G have been more than happy to help me out with replacement parts, as well as Cardo, who obviously have seen my smashed up intercom and are also helping me out to get me back on the road with a Cardo intercom in my new helmet. So very, very grateful to be in the position I am, obviously. Without obviously the support of this channel, I wouldn't be able to have those sponsorships. So obviously that thank you extends to everyone here. And the amount of well wishes I've already had, even though I've only just posted about the crash on Instagram when I'm filming this, is insane. So thank you. I also have my gear to go through, because that also saved me. So overall, Noxie's alright. I'm alright. Noxie's going to be fixed before I am. And I hope you're looking forward to a little bit of a rebuild series, because that's what's coming next now. Didn't expect it, but then you never do you? So there we are. Here's an update for you all. I'll be back soon. I'm going to go shop for replacement parts now. See you later.